We've spent this series exploring nattokinase from heart health to sinus relief to brain protection, but the research frontier keeps expanding. I'm Dr. Fergal Armstrong, and in this final episode on nattokinase, we're looking at two emerging areas that have researchers genuinely excited: metabolic health and, perhaps most provocatively, antiviral potential. Let's wrap up this series by looking at where nattokinase might be heading. Now, we've touched on blood pressure in our first episode, but nattokinase's effects on lipids deserve their own discussion. For patients with dyslipidemia, that's abnormal cholesterol and triglyceride levels, researchers have been exploring combination therapy with red yeast rice, or monascus. Red yeast rice contains monacolin K, which is structurally identical to the statin drug lovastatin. It inhibits HMG-CoA reductase, the same enzyme targeted by prescription statins. A 2023 4-month randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial published in Nutrients found that a nattokinase monascus supplement produced significant reductions in total cholesterol LDL-C and non-HDL cholesterol in patients with dyslipidemia. We're talking absolute reductions of around 0.5 millimoles per litre for total and LDL cholesterol. Earlier research showed even more dramatic results over 6 months: a 41% reduction in LDL cholesterol, a 25% reduction in total cholesterol, and a 15% drop in triglycerides, with HDL increasing by 7.5%. Now, I should say that it is the HDL cholesterol that is otherwise known as the good cholesterol. So why does this matter? Well, nearly 30% of patients discontinue statin therapy due to muscle soreness and other side effects. For those individuals, a combination of nattokinase and red yeast rice may offer an alternative pathway to lipid management. Though I want to be clear, this shouldn't replace statins without medical guidance, particularly in high-risk patients. Now, in this next section, we touch on research that generated significant public interest, and I want to approach it with appropriate scientific caution. In 2022, Japanese researchers published a study in Molecules demonstrating that nattokinase could degrade the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. The spike protein is what allows the virus to enter human cells by binding to ACE2 receptors. In laboratory experiments, and I emphasize in vitro, meaning in test tubes and cell cultures, nattokinase degraded the spike protein in both a dose-dependent and time-dependent manner. The S protein was effectively broken down after 60 to 180 minutes of incubation. Importantly, when the enzyme was heat inactivated or blocked with protease inhibitors, this effect was lost, confirming it was indeed nattokinase's enzymatic activity that was responsible. The researchers also demonstrated that nattokinase could degrade the receptor binding domain of the spike protein and the ACE2 receptor itself, potentially a dual mechanism for inhibiting viral entry. However, and this is crucial, these are in vitro findings. The US Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality reviewed this area and concluded there's currently insufficient clinical evidence to support nattokinase as a COVID-19 treatment. We don't yet know if orally consumed nattokinase can achieve concentrations in relevant tissues to replicate these laboratory effects. As we conclude this series, let's talk safety, because this is ultimately what matters for clinical use. The good news is that nattokinase has a reassuring safety profile. Human trials have shown it's well tolerated at doses of 2,000 to 4,000 fibrinolytic units per day, with short-term studies suggesting that doses of up to 10,000 fibrinolytic units daily haven't produced serious adverse effects. It's been consumed in natto form in Japan for centuries without significant safety signals. However, and we've emphasized this throughout the series, nattokinase's potent blood-thinning properties mean it can interact with anticoagulants like warfarin and antiplatelet drugs like aspirin and clopidogrel. There have been case reports of bleeding complications when combined with these medications. If you're taking prescription blood thinners, don't add nattokinase without consulting your doctor. Similarly, it should be stopped at least 2 weeks before any scheduled surgery due to potential bleeding risks. So where does this leave us? Nattokinase represents something quite remarkable, a single enzyme derived from traditional fermented food that addresses multiple interconnected pathways in human health: fibrinolysis, blood pressure regulation, lipid metabolism, inflammation, and potentially respiratory and neurological function. For the average person interested in preventative health, nattokinase at 2,000 fibrinolytic units daily is a reasonable consideration, particularly if you have mild hypertension, elevated cardiovascular risk, or a family history of heart disease or stroke. For those with dyslipidemia who cannot tolerate statins, the combination with red yeast rice is worth discussing with your healthcare provider. The antiviral research is intriguing but premature for clinical recommendations. The Alzheimer's research is promising but still largely preclinical. Science moves methodically, and that's as it should be. What we can say is that nattokinase is a low-cost, generally safe supplement with genuine therapeutic potential across multiple domains, and that research is ongoing. And that wraps up our nattokinase series, from biological drain cleaner to molecular scissors to potential viral inhibitor. This humble fermented soybean enzyme continues to surprise researchers. It's a beautiful reminder that traditional foods often contain wisdom that modern science is only beginning to unpack. I'm Dr. Fergal Armstrong. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Stay curious, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time on MedHeads.